me proceed with this talk. And Amiya Babu, the amazing thing about him was his capacity to organize people. It's amazing, amazing. I have seen good organizers, but his capacity to get the best of Calcutta in Bengal initiative and to make them come out, and he would sort of recede into the background. Bengal initiative in the heydays was something to remember, and it will be part of my notes on life if I ever reach that stage. So it's indeed a double honor for me to be speaking in his talk dedicated to his memory. Now this is a subject where I speak more as a part of civil society rather than as a civil servant or as a practicing media person now for 4 years almost. Is the media free? I'll be coming up with a postulate, and I don't expect everyone to agree, but unless you have a bias, you can't sort of get through. So there are a few generalizations that I'll be using, but that's only to focus the argument towards some definite direction. That's all. It's a little strong on certain presumptions, but I have facts to support whatever I have said. So, is the media free? Now, what would be constituting freedom? It's a very vague subject. There are tomes and volumes on what constitutes freedom. Where media is concerned, I would say that's a power to resist pressures, overt or covert. That's the bottom line. Do you have the power to look into the eye and say what you want to say? Your statement has to be narrated, has to be linked with facts on the ground. We are not here for your philosophical statements about how life should be. Now, government is something of a mystery to me after 40 years. Would consist of how the overt and covert attempts to bring the viewpoint represented in any media, whether it's print or electronic, would be first, naughty boy is the government. Having served it faithfully and sometimes unfaithfully for many years, I know how the mind operates, and my senior Mr. Deepak Rudra is also here. So political forces, this has got nothing to do with government per se. There are forces that move in spite of government and sometimes because of government. We'll come to them. Business interests. At the bottom line, whether you believe in Marx or whether you believe in open society, it's the economy that drives you around. And those who control the economy tend to control many things their way. Proprietors. This is a little distinct from business interests per se. Business interest would be more of a lobby or a group that advocates a particular line. A proprietor is somebody who can advertise his goods and get away with it. Comes the dominant advertisers. This is a role we don't focus on at all. We go into macros and miss out the main culprit on the show. Those who pay the piper call the tune. That's it. Then other pressure groups. There are there. It will take a long time, so I'll move on to the next slide. So these are the ones. And the freedom to express opinion without fear or favor. We expect the reporter, we expect the correspondent to be telling us in unbiased language what actually happened. The rest we can make up. The rest we can make up. I mean, whether it's in Rani Mukherjee or anything, we'll make up. We'll make up. But the facts have to be there, not presumptions. The second interesting thing for people, even those who are very senior to me, I would submit, the government is not a monolith. Certainly not. It's a bizarre jigsaw puzzle. A bizarre jigsaw puzzle. But means in the center or in the state, different ministries. Now, different ministries are almost always at war. And if you get frustrated, Mrs. Basu is here, she has been an MP, she knows how frustrating it is to get your way because this ministry says that, other ministry said that. Remember this silver lining. Thank God they are fighting. Had all of them been together, human society would be at peril. And I say that very seriously. Thank God they are fighting so bubbling. And it's happened in medieval Europe, it has happened all over the world. So that's one saving grace. If you are skillful enough, you can negotiate the ball between contending rugby players. And each one of them has such a bloated idea of one's own importance that it is automated. It's on every person, different departments in states as well. So if you think at the state government, I'm not referring to X, Y or Z, that is one monolith led by one party, by one leader. Take a second look. It's not like that. There are too many tensions running within the government, any government. And whether the collated, the bottom line is whether all of them can get together after you. That's a point. There is more delight within government about the scandal of one department when it comes out, and the usual reaction is serves him right. Serves him right. So these are things that you would not know unless you have an endoscopic view, because you tend to deal with the subject as monolith. Then it consists of the ruling parties and coalitions. Now I'll be a little free with this. I was serving the last non-coalition government in India for many years. They lasted quite. The last non-coalition government, single-party government. And then I went into 3 governments in 3 years or 2 years. One lasted 5 months, the other lasted 9 months. It went on like that. When somebody asked me, what is this quarrelsome nature of coalitions and aren't they a nag? Because that was one stance put in by the last government, coalition compulsions. I was traveling with a minister, and there were 4 of them among the 12 seats in the business class, 4 of them, 4 union cabinet ministers. Not one spoke to the other. And so basically when people talk about coalitions and this and that, I put it like this, that every single party's government is a coalition of contending interests, and every coalition has more internal unity on certain interests working together than a single party government. So these are all discussions that really don't merit, because it's our annoyance to see how many little parties are acting so smart. An MP with just 2 districts of Tamil Nadu and 3 seats was allegedly destroying AIIMS, All India Medical Institute. Now, I would submit that this could happen even with somebody from the other government. So whatever was left was finished off by him. So it happens, but this is the groundswell. And what I'm telling you is something that the pressmen come to know, journalists come to know very early. Interests of ruling parties and coalitions, individual ministers and bureaucrats. Individual ministers and bureaucrats both play a very sizable role. And local government bodies and regulatory agencies. Local government bodies, anyone who has faced a municipal corporation would know what I'm talking about. So it goes on like that. Government 2, where central ministers are concerned, there's an attempt always to secure a good press. So they have their own PIO. Never mind that they're hardly effective, but then that is genetic within the setup. Effectiveness and this is not. They have a paper, and they keep giving handouts. Individual ministers, politicians also influence through stratagems. In the last government, I'm not very familiar with what's going on here, or I would rather refrain from commenting about the present government because I don't have the, let's say, inner view. The last government, it was breakfast power meetings, power breakfast meetings. I think they learned from CII or somewhere, which meant that very early in the morning one had to attend, and decisions were apparently taken by lunchtime. It was all over, but never mind. And one of the persons will be coming to you soon, I think, Manishankar Iyer. He is also on the power, this thing, and the only best thing I remember, he'd serve good South Indian food. Now, these are some of the stratagems, yet independent journalists survive. This is perhaps the major silver lining that I'll mention today. In spite of this behemoth, in spite of everything, I mentioned three names: Sainath, P. Sainath, George Verghese, a role model, a person who took me under his arms when I went to Delhi, and even Paranjoy. I mentioned Paranjoy because your nephew, but I hold him in very high regard. The way the fellow carries on independently, just incorruptible. So there are these people, but let us move on to the murkier side of the scenario. There's a few insights that perhaps I need to share. Ministry's job is to negotiate different interests. Let us not give ourselves platitudes and sort of fool ourselves too much. The Ministry of Environment is constantly battling between this force and that force, this force and that force. It is under tremendous pressure to give a go-ahead signal in ecologically fragile areas. It is at the same time duty-bound to look after the economic, the interests of its major stakeholder, and that is environmentalists. So it's one step back and one step forward. One step back, it's such a dynamic equilibrium, such an equilibrium that's going up and down, that you can almost take a scorecard per day, and the net result is something. And it has got nothing to do with whether X is there or Y is there. If it just happens that the entire string is purchasable or user-friendly, then you have a different decision coming up. But that hardly happens. So there is something that goes on to the destruction of, let us say, hill tract, and then you also have a counter decision coming up. Sides are taken which trigger off the press. Now this is where the press comes in. The press is the megaphone or the microphone for both sides. A secretary could jolly well let into the market something he didn't like. To hell with his oath as keeper of secrets. That's the word, secretary, keeper of secrets. Because he feels the larger national interest cannot be disturbed by the present occupant of the chair. I'm sorry. I've tried to convince you. So the reverse often happens. The minister may be taking a much wholesome stand on the issue, and he knows that the babus are after him. So these games go on. Lobbyists are employed to ensure a good press. The amount of money that is being poured in Delhi now on lobbying, and lobbyists have become very respectable, very, very respectable. When I joined in 80s in Delhi, I was told that please don't go to five-star hotels because there are people watching them. And then I saw the whole thing take place. He was marked as a lobbyist, and the CBI used to bring lists of people, undesirable persons, and circulate it. It's a part of our property. This, who's an undesirable? I see the undesirable persons everywhere. Everywhere. Even in club presidents, anyway. So lobbyists and pressure and blackmail tactics are not unknown. This is where the freedom of the press to come out with the facts is under strain. The interaction between government per se and the minister-editor nexus, bonhomie, this is a fact in Delhi and state capitals. So these are the hard realities within which you operate, whether it's free or not. Every journalist of consequence has his minister. In fact, I can say it quite boldly without fear of contradiction. We used to wait in Panchvati. Panchvati is actually the cabinet room located within 7 Racecourse Road, which means the Prime Minister's house. So, and we were supposed to surrender our mobiles at the protocol, at the SPG gate, the Special Protection Group. I was allowed, but anyway, I said others would get jealous, so let me, and I am relieved of the mobile phone for some time. But it's a fact, and I know it, that by the time the cabinet meeting ended, or even before it ended, every important functionary who was coming out was at his mobile giving his version of the story. Where is the oath of secrecy? It was just that this view has come up and this view hasn't come up. These are ground realities. And every journalist of consequence has his own nexus with that minister. Some show off, some keep it discreet. That's all. These are the government, the fourth one. Plot distribution. I'm putting up a question. Salt Lake. Salt Lake, if you look at the list, now many have got it on their own, whatever, because it was supposed to be given. Many have got it on quota basis, terminal basis. And if you look at the out of turn quota, as we put it, nobody is above, no profession is above board. I can list out the number of judges. I'm got judges. I can go on listing out the number of bureaucrats. These are out of turn quotas. By the time I became a little better known, I had asked for one. And I was told that my turn will come up in 2020 or something. So I was asked that if you want an out of turn one, you have to go to a particular PA or PSI, I was not very sure, in a small room of 3 feet by 2 feet, located in the middle of Writers' Building. I knew this gentleman when he was a steno. And I knew that that room, next to the Chief Minister's room, was under watch, and that my colleagues would have a very poor opinion of me if they found me crawling there. So I decided not to go. The net result is I never got a plot. I never got a plot. I can say with a certain amount of boldness, a certain amount of straightforwardness, that the price for retaining your autonomy is rather heavy, because the same would apply to DDA. I was a minister secretary, so I could get a DDA. Anyway, so it's not I, but what I'm saying is that it applies to the press, that these plot distribution, the plot thickens everywhere. And I have not brought in golf club, not even brought in the golf club, I have not brought in anything. I'm just saying this is plot distribution and other favors like golf club membership. But the natural resources have been converted to golf clubs. These are the pressures. Even more neutral editors and senior journalists must have inner line with politicians, or you're kaput. You're not on the scene. You're not on the scene. Remember, every state capital or a state or central capital is a battleground. And at the end of the day, what is your inner line? Without mentioning names, there are people employed by the major newspapers of Calcutta who must have an inner line. And there are newspaper groups that have 4 inner line on 4 contradictory routes. If you want this, you ask this. If you want this, you employ him. It goes on. I mean, Shobhashan is laughing, but he knows them by name. Ashima, you also know them by name. But anyway, so stories are simply dropped. Instead of carrying stories, the murder of stories I have seen with my own eyes. Last week also I saw one. So they are just dropped, and some picked up and sensationalized. So this is the inner line, and rival interests ensure that they're vesting. When I was election chief here in 98 and 99 elections, and I went to do my PhD, and I never knew that 2 elections will come up in 98 and 99. So there people asked me about rigging. And rig, they said Rig Ved was written here, so rig, all sorts of things went on. So I was asked this question, am I being a government's poodle? At the end of the day, I was a bit tired of this. Rigging is something that you couldn't control with the best of intentions. But I said that after making a few discrete case studies, that just relax. The rival parties rig with such intensity that the actual advantage is 1%. Just 1%. He rigs 3.5, he rigs 2.5. So that's it. But that needs, so this one, rival interests ensure that both sides are hurt through differences in the media. And I'm positioning the media as a player, an active player in this internal rivalry. I could give a very bookish stand as media is this, media is that, this is what the Geneva Code says, this is what that code says. What I'm giving you is a hard reality of what actually happens. And there is this rise of the farmhouse journalists. Farmhouse journalists are the ones who go above plots. A farmhouse in Delhi is usually on the ridge. The ridge is supposed to be the last bastion of civilization before the Thar desert encroaches into Delhi. Now, there are characteristics there of people who have never got off their horseback and say, 16 December, bachcho to karte aisi. So there are these contending forces, and it's not very different from what it was during the third battle of Panipat with the Rohillas on the one side, the Jats on the other, the Rajputs on the other. It really remains like that. Really remains like that. But the farmhouse journalist is something, and top editors who are a treat to read, their articulation, their sense of weight, they're putting the finger on the right pulse, is a treat to read. My heart sank when I heard the two farmhouses they owned, and these could not come out. A farmhouse is worth about 500 crores or something. It's obscene amounts. I mean, you don't think in terms of those amounts. Harshad Mehta was alleged to have given a Prime Minister 1 crore in a suitcase. Do you remember? 1 crore is something that a customs inspector won't take, even for starters. Even for starters. Oh. So, rise of the farmhouse journalist is a phenomenon, and some of the most articulate journalists are in the farmhouse category. An intellectual on rent, column, whatever, a pen available for a fee. This is more deep-rooted than just government bullying. I have given you the ecosystem. Government bullying is only one sort of, it happens to crude people who call them and say, tang tod dunga. This is passé. It's not done anymore. Deep tentacles within print and media. And now I'm coming to the political side of it. The PTC of Badals. I'm making a public statement, let him file. PTC of Badals, Punjab Television Company, control the entire cable chain. Sun TV of Marans. OTV in Odisha. Of course, not that. I mean, this fellow is a more sensible person, Jay Panda. But then he is there. And is a very political person. Focus TV of Jindals. This is Jindal who was blackmailed for 100 crores, as I told you, by a newspaper for a story. So what money are we talking about? Who in this room can wager 100 crores? So stranglehold can be tackled through regulations. Comment stranglehold is something we can still tackle, and there is an active, urgent and very critical civil society that will take care, that has learned to speak for itself and tell people where they get off. And public outcry. Now let me give you some revenue comparisons. This is the official part of the revenue. Television moves to about 20,000 crores to 22.5, 16%. Print is still alive in India, 16,000 crores. And it's said to be about 17,000 crores. 5% change. That means all over the world print has dipped. But in India it will go on thanks to the neoliterates and aspiration class up to a point, and they'll start dipping. Radio is a very small industry, but a very deeply, its penetration is deep. And these are figures I just wanted to give you. OH means out of home advertisement. These are all advertising jargon, which simply means outdoor advertising. Cinema, incidentally, now you must look at the cinema figures. This is the figure for cinema. It just doesn't stand anywhere. The The control over the mind through stereotypes and tales that are merchandised or marketed through the mainstream cinema in financial term doesn't matter. It's another way of looking at things, that's all. So this is, now West Bengal's revenue collection, if you want to put in the figures in context, is about 45,000 crores. 45,000. That was one of my tasks. And when I left, I think we were about something like 18,000 crores, 20,000 crores. So they've gone up. They've gone up. Now I'm coming to the politician TV channel, Kasturi TV. There's this H.D. Kumaraswamy. I'll give you context. H.D. Kumaraswamy is a fellow who's a son of Deve Gowda. And Deve Gowda was the transient Prime Minister of India. He's just a Mufassil yokel sort of propelled to national fame, and he got a little heady with it. Suvarna TV, owned by Chandrasekhar MP. Chandrasekhar is that handsome guy who comes in with a beard, who speaks so well on every subject, but he has his own tight control. Sakshi TV, owned by Jagan Mohan Reddy. People are still hunting for the treasure that allegedly went with a helicopter crash. So these are some of the examples. I can go state by state. NTV and TV5 influenced by Jagan Mohan Reddy. Studio N owned by Chandrababu Naidu indirectly. Odisha TV, I have already told you, BJDMP. India Vision owned by Muslim League Secretary. News Live and Rang owned by Assam Congress. He's just left the Congress. He's just joined the BJP. Viswaranjan Sarma, Horma. So just left it. So Janashri owned by Karnataka ministers. Bellary kickbacks. Ambitions. Now, if it finally becomes the ambition, no, MJ is a good friend of mine. He doesn't, we keep lobbying at each other, right from presidency onwards. We have this thing, we think the other guy is highly overrated. So, but he has a beautiful pen, let me admit. So anyway, MJ, for instance, and I've seen him in a very handsome, he's a very young man who suddenly starts looking old. We know him. Now, MJ's, if your ambition is finally to join a political party, then why did you talk about distance, about the concept of justice, about the analytical way of looking at life? What, I mean, a big deal. At the end of it, if you are there, Dua, another person who led this thing, Aditi Shams. So I'm not making, they're good friends. Dua has lovely dinners. Chandan Mitro, our good friend. So ultimately, Vijay Darda is that Maharashtra's this thing, Jansatta. So I mean, I'm saying that if you're given a choice, if you're up for, I mean, if you are a political person, if you are an academic, if you are this thing, it's all right. But once you have carried public opinion with you and you are up there, so it's only likely that your analysis is laced in a particular opinion. That's all. Because the journalists have a role much bigger than a classroom. India TV, Rajat Sharma. Rajat has never hidden his political ambition. So Rajat Sharma, you can't discredit because he has said, I'm giving you a Hindu-centric viewpoint, a heartland viewpoint. I'm sick and tired of you urban types. Rajiv Shukla, News 24. Anuradha Prasad is again the sister of Ravi Shankar Prasad. It's very complex. It's almost like my ancestry. So Rajiv Shukla is the other guy who ran the BCCI. Focus Television, owned by Bennett Coleman and Robertium. Anyway, let's pass. IBN Lokmat, Vijay Darda. When the CBI went after him and picked him up for that coal deal, I met him on the floor, on the lobby of Parliament. I said, "Kaise hai?" Bole, "Theek thaak, bahut theek hai." I said, "No, everything is under control." Jaya, she has also 2 leaves. I mean, there's some talk about botanical sisters. So, Jayalalitha, AIDMK Supremo, owned by Kalanidhi Maran, this one, son. Then I remember the other group coming up and saying we want a TV license, we want to call it Moon. I said, go and do whatever, you can't get it. Okay, Kartikeya Sharma. Kartikeya Sharma is the one where that Manu Sharma, Dishum Dishum. Yeah. I mean, owned by Panda, I mentioned. TV channels and political agenda. NDTV, well, it has, I won't put it. There are acquisitions, I won't put it. All I know is that there's a huge investment has been made in South Africa and other places, and there are things. But one of the most Times Now. Now, Times Now, again, we don't know because he has appropriated all of patriotism to himself. Now, I keep saying he's a very bright boy and he says, that's my model. I'm not Pantabhat like you. I said, okay, okay. But what he has done is sent viewers back to Doordarshan News. People who don't want to screaming news, we are about 2.4 times higher than him. Yes, not NDTV. NDTV to go, but in that, I'll tell you, we have an English slot between 9 and 10. It's basically a Hindi channel and we can't sort of, bilingual channel, news channels don't last. I've been telling government, but nobody wants to listen. The English slot, which is managed by boys and girls we have recruited from outside, is run at 9 o'clock. It's called Newsnight. That gets 2.4 times that of Times Now. But anyway, this is not the place to advertise. Remarkable rise in non-media investment. This is the other thing that's coming up. Mukesh Ambani. CNN, IBN colors. People in the industry know of the coup d'etat, how it happened. 1800 crores? Something like that, 1800 crores. CNN, IBN colors. Then Anil Ambani. Big FM, Reliance, DTH, Big TV. KM Birla, India Today. We are not very sure, but there are these things. And since he was raided, it must be, must be true. Vinod Sharma, NewsX. So now this story is about non-media interests, non-political interests who are making an active investment in media. Okay. Now let me tell you, there are 450 registered news channels, TV channels in India. 40, 50. Active around 200 or 250. The number varies. Some come up, some go down. 3 showing balance sheet profits. Just 3. No one is making profit. How do you survive? How do you survive? Emerging monopolies are worrisome. ABP, Z, India Today. I'm giving 3 examples of emerging monopolies. Means different verticals from newspaper to television distribution to satellite. I'll come to that a little later. Which colossus? Admittedly, government is a blundering colossus, and it has always been that. Its genetic character is that it doesn't depend on who's actually running the top, who's the cherry on the top of the ice cake. The thing is, you have a behemoth that's blundering and hegemonistic and often and very rude. At the cutting edge, it's very rude and everything. But when you think of which colossus are we heading for, it's a little worrisome. Because you can still negotiate and throw out these fellows who represent them. You can't throw out business interests. Business group, I'm giving you some examples. ZTV, for instance, print, TV, radio, dish TV, cable. When I knew Subhash Chandra Goel, who's dropped to Goel now, I'm sure, sir, you also knew him, Subhash Goel. He was a rice trader of Khadi Bauli, Old Delhi. No, that's all right, but the urge to monopolize everything. We have this ongoing tussle. He's about 10 years senior to me, so I call him, I am the oldest television. I am the A of TV, he's the Z of TV. Start TV hasn't yet entered print, but Rupert Murdoch has this insatiable instinct for governing things, and it's just a matter of time. TV, radio, dish TV, cable. And this group was going away in 2002. I'll tell you the story of how one minister in 2003 went and persuaded them to stay back because they wanted to take on Z. And the end result was they got Peter Mukherjee. That's a good manager. As a manager, I mean, as a doer, Peter Mukherjee is... Anyway, then we have Sun, tired of it. You just can't penetrate that state. You can't talk. Everything is monopolized. And have you seen Chennai Express? Some of you must have seen. Very tough-looking chaps. You just barge into your office and say, we want to have a conversation with you. In TV Today group, Arun Puri, one of the most decent men I know, print, TV, radio, DTH is not coming, cable is not coming. They're going through financial problems now. Times, print, TV, radio, then I go on Reliance. So that's it. This is the way it goes on. Sun TV, again I mentioned, Mavis Satcom, OTV, it's come repeated. Advertisers control. This is the third most interesting. Political control, business interests getting in, non-media interests getting. 65% of TV advertisers, 85% of print media. These are the wording is a little... The television industry is run up to 65, financed up to 65% by advertisers. Who calls the shots? 85% of print media is advertising, 15% is subscription. If they increase the subscription, you can't take it anymore. I mean, you can take it, but most people can't take it. So they keep it low. It was 2 rupees for many years. Now they've jacked up. Keep it low. It's financed by advertising. So there is a vulnerability of advertisers. Most big companies involved. Now I'll give you the inner economics. English news channel has a magnificent viewership of 0.1% of India. It's actually a little less than 0.1. It was on TAM, it was on Bark, it is on all ratings. English news TV channels where everybody wants to appear. They grab 12% of the ad spend. Just multiply. English press, 10% of readership. Grab 41% of ad spend. Class control, PLU was people like us. Activists go in for hue and cry. For instance, I'll say the Maggie case is not yet clear. I mean, I'll stand dissident, not because I am paid by Maggie or something. I won't buy my middle. But it's not clear. I mean, this rampant activism without getting in, because I have heard from the international press that the other people have taken it. I mean, all of a sudden, okay. Sugarcane lobby, wow. In West Bengal, you will not understand what the sugarcane lobby is, which is represented by Sharad Pawar, only one of them. The sugarcane lobby in the mainstream rural industry is something, and so we are caught it. Don't do it. Do it now. This is, violence is used as a tool. Violence as a tool is the Samna case. Some political forces threatened the press. I'm giving Samna as an example. Samna was ransacked by goons of a particular outfit. Fear is a key. AP, for instance, has been a bit of a disappointment. Aam Aadmi Party. They boycott Z News. I have said that nobody is fond of Z, but own ad spend of that gentleman is 500 crores. Atrocious. Nobody gave it the authority to use the taxpayers' money for building up, created Indian mess. Yet the Indian media can differ. Remember, Indian media did create a lot of space in the freedom struggle. It grew up from the freedom struggle. So there are muscles, there are genetic impulses within the media to be much more than just pipe down, just say yes. 1950 to 75, there's a quick overview, was a period when Parliament was a watchdog. This was a glorious period of Parliament. And Pilu Modi, Masani, one of the most interesting features at this period was a son-in-law. The Congress had problems with sons-in-laws, so this was a good son-in-law, Feroz Gandhi, who actually made Mr. Nehru, his father-in-law's finance minister, resign. Parliament debate. 75 was a watershed. Emergency was a watershed. The honeymoon broke, the bubble burst. 72 to 2000, print media checks politics in whatever, whether it be Ramnath Goenka, whoever it is, even Varun Sengupta, they did it. I mean, this is a broad classification. 2000 to 2010, TV journalism leads the media. They make an old case like Jessica Lal opened up. They put on metaphors and symbols that are not Indian, like candles, like reeds and all that. They manage. But 2010, August was the high water mark. I was part of the cabinet committee because I didn't have a minister, on Commonwealth Games, and the only one not sent to jail. Okay. Now, no, that's because we had nothing to do with the car. We did only the opening and closing ceremony, which I thought was better than the games. Anyway, so 2000 to 2010, August 2010, the bubble burst. They just couldn't take it. India could just not take it anymore. There are two major explosions that have happened, both are landmark. Rapes have happened, rapes continue. But December 16th, 2011 was enough. And 2010. This is that exciting period. I happened to be on the media right on Parliament Street where all the buns and garows take place. And people asked me about my discomfort. I said, I'm used to it. I come from a state where I'm used to these things. I can walk over the protesters to my car. 2010 was the Commonwealth Games and trial by media. This is the first time I've seen strength being asserted. Trial by media. It continued from September, October with toilets being shown all over the Commonwealth Games. After the Games, about 13 days it was off. 14th day they went after him. Then came the CAG report on coal, and this went on. Throughout that period, it was like a never-ending serial that's going on in Bombay now, Bombay and Raigad. And this happened. And 2011, heads must roll. January 2011, Suresh Kalmadi was sent to jail. Before that, the media made lampoons of his flat, bloated accomplices and sent them to jail. After this, it's been every day. Now, is it a free media? I've gone into the context of it. So here are pulsations of what could be a determined free media bereft of interest. Was it that nobody spoke on behalf of Kalmadi? Was it the economic interests were not there? They were there. But the pulsation, the explosion, the unity among the media at that time was phenomenal. And I remember anyway, so print media, PCI, the Press Council of India, is a disaster. Disaster. I mean, we had a chairman called Justice Karju, but I won't, since it's justice, I can't say much. But anyway, so the print media ignore the PCI rulings. Warning, admonition, censure. Naughty boy, I'll hit you with a pencil. So, government refuses to strengthen PCI. Over the last 5 years, I've taken part in parliamentary debates. Why don't you give the press council some teeth? They can keep it. Teeth? What teeth? So, yet you see an industry regulated body like the NBSA, News Broadcaster Standards Authority. So, this has been very successful. So I'm not leading you to a conclusion, but I'm saying that there are still hopes that a regulatory body set up and elected by the corporate sector has done better. Needs urgent, but it needs, the PCI needs urban strengthening. One small thing, the Leveson report has perhaps not been even heard of by most people. This Leveson report comes in when a flaming red-haired lady starts tapping phones in the UK, in London. She apparently can call the Prime Minister Tommy Bar, darling, or whatever. We have had this darling coming on tape and discussing what dress you're wearing. So, after that, they take an immediate call in Britain. They say nothing doing. We can't let it happen. So, Lord Leveson is sent in for a report. He does a very thorough inquiry, culture, practice and ethics of media. Unlike in the UK, they already have an Ofcom, which is a regulatory Supreme Court over the press. USA have an FCC, France has a CSA, India has no media regulator. I'm flagging this point, India doesn't have a media regulator. I've already mentioned the PCI is supposed to look after print media, and it's not something you can write home about. UK could heal itself about the tabloids and phone tapping. Leveson report was not even discussed in India. Not even discussed in India. I was there through the whole entire period. One of the reasons for the Leveson report itself was about 5 kgs or 10 kgs, and it's huge voluminous ones. Even the summary executive which I read, paid news, 100 crores blackmail case on Naveen Jindal. 100 crores, as I told you. This paid news is something we can't make out. Which part of it is paid and which part of it is not paid. So this is another subtle thing that's happening. And if 4 contradictory papers give you more or less the same thing, you tend to believe it. Self-accreditation. This is a terrible thing that's happening. Accreditation cards are given to pressmen, and we have exactly 1 lakh registered newspapers. Once you have registered a newspaper, and you can't stop a registration, he is entitled to so many accreditation cards. And they are given by the state authorities. They have to. These cards are then sold and said, you pick up so much rent, give me that part. You want, I can give you tapes on that. News head in 100 crore blackmail. So this is a terrible thing. Salary of Indian journalists, 22,000 average. Trainees get about 10,000. My nephew, who's just in the US now, he worked for a very reputed paper and he did many top stories. 7,000 was the rate for which he worked 20 hours a day or 18 hours a day. And he got a raise to 9,000 or something. Very bright boys. Hire and fire threat. Power, whenever power is disproportionate to pay, like the government Babu, a part of the gap between pay and power is monetized. It's Sircar's law. Vulnerability is high. So they are high vulnerability because one of the factor is poor pay. Now let's take a look at this horrid picture and say, where are we ending? India has a population of about 130 crores. We stopped talking about 125 crores. That was many years ago. We breed faster. 130 crore population, 7.5% view news. Okay? 0.1% see Indian English news. How much is the power to influence? PLU is okay. If people like us, did you hear Pranay? That's okay. But how much does it really impact? 3.5% see Hindi news. 2.8% all of India sees regional news. What on earth do they see? 6.3% view news together. 51% watch soaps. Saas pe bahu thi, bahu bhi saas banegi. I watched Star Bangla yesterday. I saw a chap coming with 2 horns. I wonder, what are you? It's an insult to the sensibility of the eyes. Okay. We have an eye doctor here somewhere. So, but 16.5% watch Hindi movies. So just compare the 0.1%. So you know where the percentages stack up. I'm giving you a lot of facts. I'll leave this behind as common property for anyone who wants it. I'll leave it with Alokadi, and it's part of their property. So this is, does news really matter? In other words, does the press media really matter? Let's come to that. I'm leaving a question. I can't give you an answer. 65% of India is below 35 years. I think it's 66 by now. We've been saying this for a long time. Freedom and cultural sensitivity, offenders and social leaders. But the single point, they hardly ever read news. Ask someone. He might take, in our time, we used to open the paper backwards to see the sports page first and then come to politics. So that's very common. But now they don't even open it. Nobody opens it. So how much does it matter? Rely mostly on internet and social media. Print and TV ineffective. Social media leaders rule their minds. I had a tiff with Rajdeep Sardesai on the social media, some of who may be friends with me. And it went viral. Then I noticed that whomever was I taking on, he had something like 65 lakh supporters. So, I mean, followers or supporters, whatever they called it. Social media is ruling. So, here is one more fact. It's a different ball game. So, we were talking of the traditional media, the television. But remember, as I'm talking to you, we have about 150 million smartphones. A smartphone is a device where you can take in live streaming, live audiovisual. And it's going to go up to 220 million. That's larger than the population of most countries of Europe put together. And this feed is devoured mainly by two groups. A thin slice of corporate executives, a thin slice of the middle class, and the bulk of it is the young generation. They have 4 demands: air, water, food, 5. Air, water, food, connectivity, and bandwidth. That's all. In fact, if the bandwidth is cut, they don't know what to do. And they said in the social media, they said my mobile was not functioning. I actually talked to my folks. Folks means family. They're quite nice, you know. So even older started relying on the social media. Alternate sources are also there. This is what we are ignoring. 79% is a penetration of online internet. Not that everybody is up at it. That's a huge penetration. We've been talking 13 and 14%. Mobile, 100 crore users, and free agency model. News Hunt, Newswire, I actually subscribe to these ones. First Post, and there are lots of other things. I keep updating myself. So credibility of the traditional media is at stake. Yet the habit continues unabated. For those above 50, reach out for the papers in the morning, otherwise you won't have. You can miss your egg, but not the papers. Now that's a habit that will go with us, I guess. People form their own impressions. I'll give 2 examples of own impressions. 2014 elections. Nobody could predict. I'm tired. They were drum beating support, but nobody could predict such a landslide victory. And in 2015, the landslide victory of Aam Aadmi Party wiped off others. I guess Bihar will also be either this or that. India's tired of sitting on the fence. So is it all dark? Now, I've given you the facts, but remember the dynamics that I've shown are there all through. They're not new, they're just accentuated, exaggerated by electronic and other stuff. These are the dynamics within which power operates. I have been a witness to power, maybe partaken of it at times of weaknesses, but this is how the power dynamics operate. A model of this would be there in the corporate boardroom, would be down the corporate corridors, would be down there in academia. One day the Prime Minister asked me, why is it that teachers, he's a teacher himself, he was a teacher himself. I said, academic quarrels are so generic, so well established, because you have the finest brains empirically established, certified per square feet within a corridor of just 20 yards. So there this operates everywhere, excepting that the terms of this game are high stakes and desperate men. Last word, is it freedom? Do we need to lose our night's sleep on the freedom? I'll put it like this. Touch your heart. I'll give you a small poem as I end. I don't remember the exact words, but it goes something like this. A little black dog, I bend my knee to stroke its head. Shining at its collar is, I am the dog of the Gooptus. Whose dog are you, sir? That's it. Whose dog are you? So at the end of the day, we all have prices, tangible or intangible. And if that price coincides with our worldview or ideology, it's okay.